This podcast has been brought to you by the UK Domain, a free resource to help every small business owner take advantage of online marketing.
Hello and welcome to Small Business Snippets, the podcast from smallbusiness.co.uk. I'm your host, Anna Jordan. Today we have Sherry Coutu, a serial entrepreneur, investor and advisor. She's also on the board of Founders for Schools, Workfinder, Raspberry Pi, the DCMS, Pearson and the London Stock Exchange. We'll be discussing the most common slip-ups that businesses make when pitching to investors and the most pressing issues in the digital sector. Hello, Sherry.
Hello.
It's lovely to meet you. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Good to see you.
Great. Okay, I'd like to start off by going back to the beginning. So, as your intro would suggest, your background is in digital and tech. And you actually started out as a developer and a programmer before you became an entrepreneur and an angel investor. What was it like being a female developer at the time you started out?
Well, I've never been a male developer, and I think I came to it thinking that it wasn't that unusual being a female developer. Yeah. I had studied F International and other sort of, women who had gone into digital when I was at the London School of Economics studying. And so it didn't seem that unusual. I had joined a large consulting company, and that large consulting company had a number of women in that intake, and we were all programming. Right. So it didn't seem that abnormal to me. I was doing things that I thought was interesting, and I was learning skills that I didn't find that difficult and that I enjoyed. So it was pretty easy by and large. But I didn't know at the time how unusual what I was doing was or would be seen afterwards.
When did that become apparent?
I don't know. I don't really approach things on a gender basis. I saw other people that I liked doing work that I enjoyed, and we had projects that were interesting. When did it become apparent? I think after you do sort of notice that you're often the only woman in the room.
Right.
And it was probably afterwards that I sort of thought, oh, I wonder, it is odd. It's no longer sort of 50-50. It's a lot, it's a lot less than that. But it didn't bother me that much. I was pretty absorbed in what I was doing because it was really interesting work.
That's a good way to look at it. And some women even thrive on that kind of atmosphere as well. It's a similar situation for investors. So moving forward, as we mentioned in the intro, what were the most common slip-ups and mistakes that you saw from businesses that were pitching to you?
Well, I think there's a couple. I was thinking about your question earlier, and I think there's a couple of common sort of issues. One is not researching. So I'm a member of the Cambridge Angels and have been members of the HBS Angels as well. And if an investor comes to you and they haven't researched who they're in the room with, that is a really common blooper, and it's not a sensible one. So I think if I had advice to them, it's research who you're pitching and know what's in their portfolio, and also know what they've done before. I think having somebody explain to me something that clearly if they'd looked at my background they would understand that I knew is a waste of it's a waste of their time, whereas you can get into more detailed things right away otherwise. I think the other issue, I think something that is unforgivable to me as an investor, is not understanding who your customer is.
Yes. Or
demonstrating your keenness to delight that customer. And so a lack of focus on that is really annoying to me. I think the only reason we are given opportunities as entrepreneurs is because we can delight customers and create things that will help them in their life in a multitude of ways. And I think a lack of customer focus is annoying to me, and it's usually means for a fairly short meeting, and it definitely means that I won't follow up because it's like, well, why are you doing this? The first question I'm often asking is, why are you trying to solve this problem? And, what are your customers and what does this do for them?
Yeah, exactly. So encouraging better work experience at school is a key focus for you, especially just now. What kind of barriers do you think that small employers face when taking on work experience pupils?
So work experience for people in school and in university is something that I'm really keen on. I mean, I don't think of it as barriers. I mean, I think all small businesses have projects that they need to get done. And you can ask a full-time permanent employee who's already working full tilt to do a project, or you can think, are there ways and I can get other people from outside my company that might have a fresh view who I don't have to offer a permanent job to get this project. So to me, the biggest issue there are as a small business person in finding people to do those extra projects that I really would like to do for my customers. Maybe it's so that I can be more obsessed with my customers and get them more, focus in on, a new product development or customers in a new country or in a new city. But I think that current students at university, supplemented possibly by students doing their A-levels, is a great way of getting projects done quickly, efficiently, and hey, you might even be able to hire the student who's doing the work for you afterwards. But we all have projects. We've all got dozens of projects. Maybe it's sitting down and thinking of which of the projects do I have that would be suitable for 5 students doing for a month or 5 students doing for a couple of weeks. So just breaking it down into something that can be accomplished that will be meaningful to me as a business.
So taking it back to the start, for an employer that has never done work experience before, has never offered a kind of program of sorts,
they don't need a program. They've got projects all the time, and we all have projects. So I think there's big company ways of approaching work experience, and there's small company ways of approaching work experience.
Right.
The big company ways tend to be structured programs that happen in June or July, and they might be quite cumbersome on the company. What I've seen work brilliantly for small companies, small and medium-sized companies and startups and scale-ups are joining project teams or all working on a project that the employer wants to get done that can't get done any other way. And that means that for the supervision of that project, you've got 4 people on it, but you put together the brief. That might take you a bit of, tiny bit of time, or you could use at WorkFinder, we've got more than 100 briefs that are appropriate to ask students at university. Okay. So you could take one of our briefs of, you might be thinking about this. Here's how you do this type of project. And then you brief them on the first day. You touch base with them a half an hour just to make sure that they're going along, the right path for the length of the project, and then you get them to present the project for you at the end. And I think it's great. And then you use it because it's a project that will help you, do something more for your customers that you haven't been able to do because everybody's really busy. I mean, we always are pressed for time in small businesses and large businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the kind of state of things at the moment in terms of small businesses taking on work experiences? Is it quite common, or could it be more? It's
very common. It's
widely?
much. Well, I would love it to happen more widely, but it happens more often in startups and scale-ups than it does in large companies. So we published this at the Scale Up Institute earlier this year,
right.
That it was more likely that they had taken on students both at university and at school to do those extra projects in small and medium-sized companies. So I actually think that we should, for me, I've got endless projects, so I'd rather have a constant stream of people. And I think one of the other barriers is large companies tend to do it in the summer, but when we spoke to small and medium-sized companies, they had projects all year round, and they didn't want to be constrained to having to do it in July or something like that. So, and lots of the small companies that we work with at WorkFinder and at Founders for Schools fit it in throughout the year so that it works better with them.
I suppose they have the advantage as well because they don't have the processes and the departments to go through that larger businesses do. So
exactly. And if you and they may not exactly, and they'll have urgent projects that pop up. Maybe
right.
it's a pitch. Maybe it's a pitch for a customer, and what you need is somebody to say, well, can you do a bunch of customer research for me? We don't know these people. Use Google, use LinkedIn.
Right.
Help me put together this pitch. But there's lots of really good projects that help people who are at school and university understand what work experience is. It's deeply meaningful to the company. It also gives them a proper sense of what it would be like to work for that company. But it's risk-free because it's for, maybe it's a week, maybe it's 2 weeks, maybe it's a month, and they can choose, they get the project done, they decide if they love it or they hate it. If they love it, they can keep on talking. If they don't love it, they can try a different project in a different type of company and see if they like that industry better.
Don't get buried online by thousands of other digital savvy businesses. The UK Domain can keep you up to date with inside knowledge and practical advice for free. From social media to cybersecurity, they've got it covered. And get this knowledge delivered straight to your inbox by signing up at theukdomain.uk/register.
actually slightly pertains to your expertise. For companies in the digital sector, they're experiencing a lot of upheaval at the moment, politically, financially, in so many different ways. What would you say are the most prominent issues affecting the digital sector right now?
Well, most recently GDPR was a change. I think it was a change for the good, because it protected consumers and customers and made sure that all companies were being mindful of whose data it was that they had the privilege of being a custodian of. Mm-hmm. So I think there's that. In the UK, I'm not going to say that word, but it's been harder. It's been harder to retain people from Europe. Yeah. For reasons that are outside of our control, and that's tricky. Attracting people who have the right skill set is also really difficult, because there's been a sequencing issue with the small companies. We create lots of jobs, but they are jobs in agile management and maybe data science, and schools and universities aren't yet churning out people who have those skills. And I think solving that issue so that we small digital companies don't suffer from a skills shortage any longer is certainly very much on my mind, and I hope to make some contribution to that agenda.
It feeds back into the work experience as well, doesn't it? Because
it does,
you teach them as early as possible and let them know what opportunities are out there.
Yeah, and I think I actually think it's if you approach it understanding that you're not going to have the same job for 30 years, and actually that really sounds quite boring anyway. Let's sort of just assume that we need the framework for, working here on this type of project for this type of company for a period of time, and then we'll move on and we'll do something else, because the needs of the customers will change, and our needs as we go through our own lifetime change as well. Often we'll work full time. We might work very flexibly when we're having children, and then once they're off at university, we might go back up to full time, or like me, choose a portfolio of things, which is like having a bunch of part-time jobs, all of which I love. But I love the flexibility of this. If you listen to LinkedIn, the average person now has 25 jobs between graduation and retirement, 7 different identifiable career streams. So what's your next career stream? I mean, it's kind of neat when you think about it that way.
Yeah, definitely. What would you say to small business owners who maybe have trouble establishing what skills their workforce needs and maybe the resources as well to provide it?
Well, I think there are some great online resources. So, I use for staff LinkedIn Learning quite a lot.
Oh yeah.
For coding skills, there's Coursera, there's Udacity, there's FutureLearn. There's a lot of free online courses that allow us to upskill our staff. Except that we all need to be learning all of the time, and if we don't invest in ourselves as the leader of a small business, and we don't invest in our staffs, then it might be harder to retain people, and it might also be harder to fulfill those customer orders, because they'll be asking us for stuff that we don't know how to do. So I think a commitment to continued learning and allowing and encouraging creativity in ourselves and in our the people who work for us as a culture of learning is really important.
Now that we're touching on it, so you fit a lot into your time, and obviously there's the continual upskilling as well. So what kind of time management tips do you have for our listeners who may be struggling and a bit stretched?
Well, I'm not sure that I've got, I'm sure anybody who knows me doesn't necessarily think that I'm great at managing my time. But I try to, if you're a portfolio, it's quite helpful because you compartmentalize things and you're context switching. So that keeps you fresh. It also keeps you managing quite closely. I try, something that I have used for a long time is trying to be at home 20 out of 30 nights, especially when the kids were, at home and younger, being at home 20 out of 30 nights a month. And if you've got that rule that you will be at home by 6 p.m. or earlier if you can, that allows you to show the commitment that you have to your family and to yourself. I try to exercise as much as I should. I'm not sure. I think probably in the last month I have definitely broken my rule, but I've got training set up in January and February and March. So and it's scheduled into my diary. So I try to schedule things, and I do try to review on a weekly and a monthly basis am I content with how I'm spending my time?
Yeah, that's valuable.
And when I went to the rule of 20 out of 30 nights home by 6 p.m., I found that because there's so many interesting things going on all the time, and I wanted to do everything, I literally could find myself out every night. And then you think, my God, I haven't really seen my children. I haven't spent any time with my husband, and I don't feel good about that. And so I just sort of put a hard and fast rule, and it's like, nope, this is how I'm going to, do it from then. And it works.
Are you working when you're home at 6 p.m. or is that a cut-off point at which point you stop working for the day?
I'll stop working.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily for the day. I might go in at, back on between 10 and 11 and just sort of plan out the next day. I do tend to be sort of crazily busy. So even if it's just planning out what you're supposed to wear because you've got this jingle jangle of meetings, you think good Lord, what's going to navigate through that set of meetings of the day? What am I going to wear? But just sort of thinking about how you're going to execute the next day. If it tends to be mixed up, I don't ever go to an office and sit at a desk. So I think, I'm going to be home with the family. I'm not going to have my phone on. I'm going to focus, and that gives them the right message, and it also gives me the release that you need as a person from work.
Do you rely more on people or tech to sort of help you organise your schedule?
Both. Absolutely both. So if I'm preparing so the tech, I use Google Calendar is, I'm not making an advertisement for Google, but it is what I use.
It is good,
I think many small businesses use it rather than, some of the more traditional ones. And if I'm meeting someone, I ask them to append in what the agenda is and what the papers are. So my call forward file is not a physical call forward file. It's literally in the description of that. And I find that really helpful as I prepare for the meetings. I find, the ability to invite people to meetings from within your diary, and then if you move it, they all get notified and you don't have to do all of that, is really helpful. I do have an EA who I adore, and she's kind of a magician because I tend to want to do too many things than might actually be possible, and she makes it a lot more possible than it might otherwise be.
A lot of us do,
yeah, exactly. So I do, depend on her and enjoy the fact that she, helps and is very au fait with and good at using technology as well, which is really helpful to me.
So if you're a small business owner and you could have an entourage of sorts, what kind of people would you hire in terms of PA or an accountant?
Well, I would certainly use LinkedIn very aggressively. I probably am on LinkedIn 2 hours a day as I prepare for meetings, as I research the people that I want to pitch, these sorts of things, or the people that I'm about to speak to. I think it's really important to use tools that there are. An accountant, yes, you definitely need accountants. I think in small businesses there are great part-time accountants that you can have. And I'm a real fan of those because you don't necessarily need a full-time one. And there's a lot of particularly women returners to work who have been full-time finance directors, and they're they're with kids and they want to work on a part-time basis. And I think they are a godsend to many, many, many small businesses.
It seems to work for everybody, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, you may be a small company of 10 people. You might need someone who's doing finance a couple days a week. Well, use somebody who's a returner to work for that. And on PA, I don't know if everybody needs, there's lots of people that I know that work in large tech companies that no longer have PAs. There's many people who have the whole senior management team has a, sort of shares an EA or a PA. I think many people, and in fact, it's been shown that 65% of those jobs have already disappeared because people are using technologies more aggressively. So I think if you look at the research on what jobs are disappearing, sadly, PAs and EAs are definitely far less prevalent than they were five years ago.
It's interesting because
but I couldn't be without LinkedIn. I also use a service called A Company, which will sort of harvest your diary and then tell you, give you notes about the backgrounds of the people that you're meeting the day before. And if you don't use it, you should use it because it's amazing. But I find those really, really helpful.
Great. Well, I realise you're a busy lady. So I'll wrap up by coming back to your expertise as an investor. So you were an early investor in firms like Love Film and Zoopla. So for new tech companies looking to pitch, what would you be looking for in their pitch?
Well, for me, solving a problem that matters is the most important thing. I'm particularly interested in the future of work. So it's been a real interest for 20 years. The skills crisis is getting worse. And, I am interested in working with others to fix that problem, which I think is the number one problem that we have. I'm also very interested in the application of AI and ML in the sphere of health. And I think that there are some, just around the corner, there are some great solutions to really irksome, terrible problems of a health nature that technology will help us solve, and people who are determined to solve those problems using technology will help them solve. So I'm particularly interested in those two areas. Some people shy away from them because they're complicated, and some people shy away from them because they're highly regulated. They're really important. The health of our citizens is really important, as is the ability to have the right skills so that you can prosper and make a contribution to your community. So those are I'm not that interested in hearing people pitch me on things other than those two sort of. Yeah. They're fairly broad subjects, but those are what I'm really interested in, and can be an active, what they call smart money rather than just dumb money. I'm interested and can probably help in some ways as well.
Yeah, I mean, the health and wellness industry is massive. So what would you say to entrepreneurs who are maybe put off by a large amount of competition in the sphere?
Create a fantastic product that your customers love, that's way better than anything else that they're getting. The way that 40% of our GDP is controlled by companies that didn't exist 5 years ago. Think about that.
Yeah.
What competition? There are really big issues that are absolutely unsolved, and we entrepreneurs and the people who fund entrepreneurs are the only ones who are going to solve it on the time frame that we've got available to us. So I'd say solve them. Right. Do it.
Fabulous. Well, that seems like a good place to wrap up. So thank you very much, Sherry, for coming on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks very much for having me, and good luck with everything.
You can find out more about Sherry at uk.linkedin.com/in/Coutu. You can also visit smallbusiness.co.uk for more on raising capital and managing your time. Remember to like us on Facebook at Small Business Experts, and follow us on Twitter at Small Business UK, all lowercase. Until next time, thank you for listening.